Yeah, go back on.
Okay.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like to, I mean, the whole time you have them completely engaged with it, or focusing on you, and they're paying attention to the sounds and everything. So kudos for that. How much time did you spend getting them to this point where they're able to collaborate in a group like that and they're raising hands and stuff?
Just kind of since the beginning of the year, we just set up the routine of that even though like we kind of have the same routine of when they're on the rug as when they're in small groups, even though there's only 5 or 6 of them in the small groups, it's still the same. We take turns, we raise our hands, we listen to our friends and all that. And so I just have that consistent routine.
They definitely internalize that because you see, I mean, they work really well. I mean, these are 4-year-olds still. And they're politely sitting there waiting and taking turns, which is impressive, so kudos on that.
Thank you.
I also like kind of, at the very end, you summarize, well, this is what we've done, we're learning about, the sounds, and then you give them that next step, and we're going to continue this in our centers, which is kind of cool, so it creates that continuum that they're going to continue on. So when you think about, I don't know if it's on hot seat now, when you envisioned this activity and how you were going to do it, how do you think this compares to what your ideal state would be?
I think they're really on the right track, and this is a group of kids that some of them were able to do it with no hesitation whatsoever, and someone like Phoebe that we saw, I kind of needed to go through the items and say, do broccoli and skate start with the same sound. And eliminate, yeah, and kind of by her hearing that, she was able to do it. And so some kids are at that independent stage, and some kids still need a little bit of scaffolding and a little bit of help. So I would, kind of the goal now is just through extra exposure and more experience with it, that those kids that still do need a little extra help will become more independent with it. And then those kids that are able to do it independently, I'm hoping to start to see that translate into some of the things in the writing area. Like this week we're making Valentines, and so if they're writing, to a friend, that they might be able to figure out what the first letter of their friend's name is, and start to hear those sounds into their writing to make that kind of connection between this is a letter, this is a sound, this starts with this sound, and then this is how I write it. It's kind of that next step.
So if we look at these, I mean, the majority of those there seem like they're, I mean, I hate labeling things, but you would say that they were at a proficient level?
Yeah, I would say for what...
Maybe a little bit lower?
Yeah, I would say kind of for this point in the year, they're at a proficient level. And some kids even a little bit above and kind of ready for that next step.
So that group that we looked at, which of those do you think would be maybe that little bit higher?
I think definitely, let's see, Max and Mason were able to really identify the objects with no problem at all. Dar did kind of an interesting thing where he had a really good strategy. He went through and kind of eliminated all the other items when he came up with a pretzel. So I would say those 3 are really ready to take it to the next level. And Dar's someone who has been doing a lot of writing and showing a lot of interest in the writing area lately. And so I'm really kind of pushing him when he is writing to listen for some of those sounds. And he's really able to, if he's writing car, if I break it down for him, car, he's able to hear those sounds in that. So the hope is now, just through exposure of doing that, he'll start to do some of that more independently.
Okay, so I'm just kind of thinking for some of those that are still struggling a little bit, like Phoebe and stuff, if you had to name that or call that where she's at, what would you call that? I'm just thinking like a label that we put in and say, okay, the kids in this label, this is what we're going to work on.
I think, I think they can all do it with support. So I think just keeping that continued support. And so if I see them, in an interest area that has something to do with the initial sounds, I can kind of come over and ask them questions and provide that extra support with them. And when they take the letter detective box home too, be real intentional with the letters that I send them home with, to really pick letters that will challenge them to the right level, where they will be able to do some of it at home by themselves as well.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to write down, so students with support, that extra support time, and real intentional about the instruction they're going to provide them.
And then I made a game that will help the kids with the initial sounds too. It just has the letters on there. And then there's 2 different ways to do it. One, for those kids that do need a little extra support, has the items with the word on there. So really, they could do it by matching. It'll be interesting to kind of see. I'm not going to point that out and kind of
Is the
see
letter actually on there?
if they actually do the letter. But then also I have it without the word on there. So
Okay.
hammer, they'd have to actually know what a hammer is and then hear what that is. So definitely for those higher level kids, this will be a challenging activity.
scaffold, yeah.
But I think they will be able to do it. I think one of the hardest parts will be just getting them to identify all the items. You know, some of them will be a little bit
Yeah,
tricky.
is it a bunny or a kangaroo? Is it-
Right. You know, is it a coat or a jacket?
Right.
So I think making sure when I do introduce this that Ashley or I are at the area where they're playing this game.
I think it might be a challenge too, to say, okay, they say it's a jacket, but you got a board that doesn't have a j
Right.
sound.
Right.
What are you gonna do?
Right.
it
So yeah,
causes
and
them to
then,
struggle.
exactly. And I think what I may do is start with just 2 boards with just those handful of those items, so they don't have 101 items at once. That might be a little
Overwhelming.
frustrating.
Okay.
But I think this will be a good extension for them to have that continued practice. Because I think a lot of them at this stage can do it, but they don't know they can do it. And so they just need to have build that confidence, so that then when they go do an activity in the writing area or play a game, they're like, oh, I know what that starts with. And building that confidence.
Couple questions, because I know this is one of your SOLs is matching beginning sounds. You're also doing recognizing letters, the 10 letters. Can you incorporate that into this somehow as far as an assessment?
I could, and I think this game would help it too, because to identify the sound, they have to know what the letter is too. And I think that's something we're working on too, is when I say, what sound does this start with? A lot of them will say, moon, M, and I'll say, what sound? And then they'll say, So getting that concrete difference between what's a sound and what's a letter is still something that's a little bit of a gray area.
So it might be a nice opportunity for, again, more of that body evidence. Great.
Right, and it's good crossover between the two, so you can kind of kill 2 birds with one stone.
One final question, I'll let you off the hot seat. Our school-wide focus for our PGP this year is on I-8 indicator, which is collaboration, communication. Is there anything with this activity that you could somehow, and the analogy I've been using lately is, within our building we do a lot of vertical talk, so it's teacher to student talk, and we don't do a lot of the lateral talk between students.
Student to student.
Is there anything that you could do here to create that?
Well, I think in EC is kind of fortunate where a lot of it is student talk and a lot of it is kind of me listening more. I feel like I talk a lot in the small groups, and in the interest areas I try to sit back a little bit more and listen to that student to student talk. So hopefully as the kids do more with the initial sounds and they're more interested in it, when they do choose to go to an interest area and play a game, listening to them talk to each other, and hopefully I can just be there to kind of support them in the background, and there'll be more student to student talk.
That's awesome, yeah. Step in, engage, and pull back.
Yeah, because I think it's our natural indication just to jump in. Say, okay, this is this letter, this is what we need to find. But it is interesting because they do like to help each other. And so, for me to kind of step back and let them work it out themselves. And, and if they call it a jacket and it's really a coat, that's okay.
So when they're in their interest centers, they kind of pick and choose where they go and what they do. Do you have an opportunity to guide them as far as, because I'm just thinking like Dar, who we saw him doing the strategy where he was processing, going through all the sounds, which is similar to what you had to do for Phoebe, where you had to kind of walk her through that. I wonder if there's some way we could get the 2 of them together and it may help.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they do have the independence during interest areas to pick their own, but sometimes I do say, oh, you've been going to dramatic play a lot, let's try this. So that would be a good idea to kind of match up a student like Dar and Phoebe to maybe play the game together. And I can do that too when I introduce a new game. There's always more excitement about the game because it's new. And so I can say, oh, come on over and let's try this out. And they'll be more excited about it because it's new.
I'd love to come watch it when you do the interest center. Do you know what date or time you want to be doing
We were probably gonna, I'll probably introduce it early next week, so I would say,
Not Monday.
oh, right, there's no school Monday, so I'd say Tuesday. Or, yeah, we start interest areas about 9, yeah.
Come and do a lot.
Yeah, I think tomorrow with Valentine's Day and the Dragon Parade will be
Okay,
otherwise occupied.
cool. Thank you very much.
All right,
So nice
great.
meeting you.